Imagine a world with no laws, no cities, no schools, no money, no writing, just people, land, and survival. Now imagine one place on Earth, a narrow strip of land between two rivers, where all of that changed. Where humans first decided to stop wandering and build something permanent, something that would last forever. This place was not Rome. It was not Greece. It was not Egypt. It was older than all of them. It was called Mesopotamia. And everything you know about civilization, cities, kings, courts, libraries, trade, and the written word began right here, in the hot, dry land between two rivers, more than 5,000 years ago. This is not just a history lesson. This is the story of how humanity grew up. The word Mesopotamia comes from ancient Greek. It means the land between the rivers. Those two rivers were the Tigris and the Euphrates. They flowed through the area we now call Iraq and parts of Syria and Turkey. The land between these rivers was special. Every year the rivers flooded. When they flooded, they left behind rich, dark soil. This soil was perfect for growing food. In a region surrounded by hot desert, this was a gift. People noticed this gift thousands of years ago. They came to this land and they stayed. And when people stay in one place long enough, they start to build. Geography means the physical features of a place, the land, the rivers, the mountains, and the climate. Geography shapes people. It shapes what they eat, how they travel, and how they think. Mesopotamia had very flat land called a floodplain. A floodplain is low, flat land near a river that floods regularly. This land was easy to farm, but hard to defend. There were no mountains to hide behind, no natural walls to keep enemies out. This geography created both opportunity and danger. Opportunity because the soil was rich and crops grew well. Danger because any army could march straight in. This tension between growth and threat would define Mesopotamia for thousands of years. Around 10,000 BCE, that means about 12,000 years ago, people in this region began farming. This was a revolution. A revolution is a total, dramatic change. Before farming, humans were hunter-gatherers. Hunter-gatherers moved from place to place, hunting animals and gathering wild plants to eat. Farming changed everything. Suddenly, people did not need to move. They could grow food in one place. They could store food for later. And when food is stored, not everyone needs to farm. Some people can do other things: build, trade, teach, lead. This is the seed of civilization. Civilization means an organized, complex human society with cities, government, laws, and culture. The earliest settlers of Mesopotamia planted that seed right here, in the fertile soil between two rivers. The first great people of Mesopotamia were called the Sumerians. They lived in the southern part of the region in an area called Sumer. Historians believe the Sumerians arrived around 4,500 BCE, over 6,000 years ago. The Sumerians were remarkable people. They were creative, organized, and practical. Practical means focused on solving real problems with real solutions. They faced one very big problem. The rivers flooded unpredictably. Unpredictably means you could not know when or how badly the flood would come. Too much water destroyed crops. Too little water meant drought. Drought is when there is not enough rain or water, and crops die. The Sumerians needed to control the water, and so they invented irrigation. Irrigation means moving water from one place to another to help crops grow. It sounds simple today, but 6,000 years ago, it was an incredible engineering achievement. Engineering is the use of science and math to design and build useful structures. The Sumerians dug long channels called canals. A canal is a man-made waterway. These canals carried water from the rivers to the fields. Farmers could now water their crops even when it did not rain. They could control floods by directing water into storage basins. A basin is a large, low area that holds water. Irrigation transformed the land. Fields that were once dry became green and productive. More food meant more people could survive. More people meant bigger communities. Bigger communities needed leaders, rules, and organization. Irrigation did not just feed people. It built society. As the Sumerian population grew, small villages became larger settlements. Eventually, these settlements became something new, something that had never existed before anywhere on earth. They became cities. The first true cities in human history appeared in Sumer around 3,500 BCE. Cities like Eridu, Uruk, Lagash, and Nippur rose from the flat Mesopotamian plains. Uruk may have been the largest city in the world at that time, with a population of perhaps 50,000 people. Think about that. 50,000 people living together in one place 5,500 years ago. A city is more than a big village. A city has specialized workers. Specialized means each person has a specific job or skill. In a city, some people farm, others build, others make pottery, weave cloth, work metal, trade goods, or pray at temples. This specialization is called a division of labor. Division of labor means different people do different jobs, and together they make society function. Cities also need management. They need someone to organize the food supply, settle arguments between neighbors, defend the walls, and make decisions for the whole community. And so from the city came something else entirely new: the king. In the earliest Sumerian cities, leaders were often priests. A priest is a religious official who performs ceremonies and communicates with the gods. The Sumerians believed their city belonged to a god. The temple, a large step tower called a ziggurat, stood at the center of the city. A ziggurat was not just a religious building. It was the symbol of power. But over time, war became more common. Cities competed for water, land, and resources. Resources are things people need and use, like water, food, and materials for building. When cities fought each other, they needed military leaders. Military means related to soldiers and war. These war leaders proved their worth in battle. The people trusted them. And gradually, these leaders became permanent. They became kings. Kingship means the system of rule by a king, a single, powerful leader who governs a people and passes power to their children. This idea of inherited rule, where the son of a king becomes the next king, began in Mesopotamia. The Sumerians even wrote a document called the Sumerian King List. This was a clay tablet that recorded all the kings of Sumer, going back, they believed, to before the Great Flood. A tablet is a flat piece of clay used for writing. Power now had a name, it had a face, and it had a throne. Around 3200 BCE, something happened in Mesopotamia that changed human history forever. The Sumerians invented writing. Before writing, humans could only pass information through speech and memory. Speech disappears the moment it is spoken. Memory is imperfect. It fades. It changes. It dies with the person who holds it. Writing changed all of that. Writing is a system of symbols that records language and preserves it. The Sumerian writing system is called cuneiform. Cuneiform comes from the Latin word for wedge-shaped. A wedge is a triangular tool, narrow at one end and wide at the other. Sumerian scribes are people trained to write, pressed a reed stylus into soft clay tablets to make wedge-shaped marks. A stylus is a pointed tool used for writing. These marks formed symbols. The symbols represented words, sounds, and ideas. At first, cuneiform was used for simple record-keeping. Keeping records means writing down information to use later. Merchants tracked their goods. Temple administrators recorded grain supplies. A merchant is a person who buys and sells goods for profit. But over time, cuneiform grew more complex. People began writing stories, prayers, legal agreements, and poetry. The written word gave humanity its memory. Everything important could now survive. Writing was not just a tool, it was a superpower. One of the most astonishing things about Mesopotamia is that the world's oldest written story comes from here. It is called the Epic of Gilgamesh. An epic is a long poem or story about a hero and their great adventures. Gilgamesh was a legendary king of Uruk. The story tells of his friendship with a wild man named Enkidu, their great battles together, and Gilgamesh's terrifying fear of death. When Enkidu dies, Gilgamesh is heartbroken. Heartbroken means deeply sad, as if your heart has been broken. He goes on a journey to find the secret of eternal life. Eternal means lasting forever. He does not find it. He learns instead that all humans must die, and that the best way to live is to live fully and love deeply. This story was written nearly 5,000 years ago, and yet its message, face your fear, love your friends, accept your limits, still speaks to us today. The Mesopotamians were not just builders and farmers. They were philosophers. A philosopher is a person who thinks deeply about the meaning of life and human existence. The Sumerians and their successors did not only invent writing, they also developed early mathematics. Mathematics is the study of numbers, shapes, and patterns. They used a number system based on the number 60. We call this the sexagesimal system. Sexagesimal comes from the Latin word for 60. This system might seem strange to us today, but look at your watch. Why are there 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour? Because of the Mesopotamians. Why is a circle divided into 360 degrees? Because of them. They also practiced astronomy. Astronomy is the scientific study of stars, planets, and the universe. Mesopotamian priests watched the night sky carefully. They believed the movement of the stars and planets could predict future events. This is called astrology, the belief that celestial bodies, meaning objects in the sky, influence human life. From their observations, they created some of the earliest calendars. A calendar is a system for organizing days, months, and years. They identified constellations, groups of stars that form patterns, and named many of them. Several of the star names we use today trace back to ancient Mesopotamia. These were not primitive people. They were scientists, mathematicians, and stargazers doing their best to understand their world. Around 2334 BCE, a powerful man rose to change Mesopotamia forever. His name was Sargon of Akkad, and he built the world's first empire. An empire is a large territory, often made up of many different peoples and cities, controlled by one ruler. Before Sargon, the cities of Mesopotamia, Uruk, Nippur, Lagash, competed and fought with each other. They were city-states. A city-state is an independent city that governs itself like a country. Sargon was not born into power. According to legend, he was abandoned as a baby, placed in a basket on the river, and raised by a simple gardener. His rise from nothing to the most powerful ruler in the world made him a symbol of ambition. Ambition means a strong desire to achieve something great. Sargon conquered city after city. He unified, brought together under one rule, the many competing Sumerian and Akkadian cities into a single empire. Stretching from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea, he created one of the first professional armies. Professional means paid, trained, and organized for a specific purpose. His army did not fight only when needed. It was a permanent, full-time fighting force. This was a new idea, a powerful idea. The Akkadian Empire lasted about 150 years before internal conflict and external pressure tore it apart. But Sargon's idea that one king could rule over many peoples never disappeared. Before we continue, If you are enjoying this story and learning new English along the way, please take 1 second to like this video and subscribe to Daily English Origins. It helps so much. Thank you, and let's keep going. After the Akkadian Empire fell, Mesopotamia went through a period of chaos. Chaos means total disorder and confusion. Different city-states fought for control. The land was unstable. Unstable means not secure or reliable, always changing, always threatening to fall apart. Then came a new dynasty in the city of Ur, followed by other kingdoms, and eventually a new great king emerged. His name was Hammurabi. He was the king of Babylon, and he ruled from around 1792 to 1750 BCE. Hammurabi is most famous for one thing: his law code. A law code is a written collection of laws that applies to everyone in a society. Laws tell people what they can and cannot do. They set punishments for crimes. Before written law codes, punishments were decided by rulers or judges who could be unfair. They could favor the rich and punish the poor. Different cities had different rules. There was no consistency. Consistency means always doing things the same way, according to the same rules. Hammurabi changed this. He carved his laws onto a tall black stone pillar called a stele. A stele is a standing stone with writing or images carved on it. At the top of the stele, Hammurabi is shown receiving the laws from Shamash, the god of justice. The Code of Hammurabi contained 282 laws. They covered topics like trade, property, marriage, wages, and crime. Some laws protected the weak from the powerful. For example, one law said a builder whose house collapsed and killed the owner must be put to death. Some of these punishments seem harsh to us today, but the principle behind them was revolutionary. Revolutionary means introducing a completely new and important change. The principle was this: the law applies equally to everyone. No one is above the law. That idea still lives at the heart of every justice system in the modern world. Let us step back from kings and empires for a moment and look at ordinary people. What was daily life like in ancient Mesopotamia? Most people were farmers. They woke before sunrise and worked their fields. They grew barley, wheat, onions, garlic, lentils, and dates. Barley was especially important. It was used to make bread and beer. Beer in Mesopotamia was not a luxury. A luxury is something expensive and non-essential. Beer was a basic food. Workers were sometimes paid in beer. Even the gods in Sumerian stories enjoyed it. Women in Mesopotamian society had more rights than women in many later civilizations. Civilizations means complex, organized societies. Women could own property. They could run businesses, appear in court, and in some periods become priestesses. Children went to school, but not all children. Schools were mainly for boys from wealthy families. A school in Mesopotamia was called an eduba, which means tablet house. Students practiced writing cuneiform on clay tablets. They copied text over and over until they could write perfectly. Trade was central to Mesopotamian life. Merchants traveled by river and by land, carrying textiles, grain, and pottery. Textiles are cloth and woven fabrics. In exchange, they brought back timber, metals, and precious stones. Things that Mesopotamia, with its flat, treeless plains, could not produce itself. Life was hard, but it was also rich with culture, connection, and meaning. As centuries passed, new powers rose in Mesopotamia. One of the most formidable was the Assyrian Empire. Formidable means very powerful and slightly frightening, commanding deep respect or fear. The Assyrians came from northern Mesopotamia, from a region along the upper Tigris River. They were extraordinary warriors. At the height of their power, from roughly 900 to 612 BCE, the Assyrian Empire was the largest the world had yet seen. The Assyrians were feared across the ancient world. Their army used iron weapons. Iron is harder and stronger than bronze, the metal used before it, and they developed advanced siege warfare. Siege warfare is the military strategy of surrounding a city, cutting off its supplies, and forcing it to surrender. But the Assyrians were not only warriors. Their capital, the city of Nineveh, was one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. King Ashurbanipal, one of the last great Assyrian kings, built a magnificent library in Nineveh. This library contained tens of thousands of clay tablets, including the oldest copies of the Epic of Gilgamesh that we have today. Ashurbanipal collected knowledge the way other kings collected gold. He sent scribes across his empire to copy texts from every city and temple. He believed that knowledge was power, and he was right. The Assyrian Empire fell in 612 BCE. When a coalition of enemies, a coalition means a group of different parties united for a common purpose, destroyed Nineveh. But the knowledge stored in its library was buried under the ruins, waiting. Thousands of years later, archaeologists would dig it up and give it back to the world. Archaeologists are scientists who study human history by excavating and analyzing ancient sites and objects. After the fall of Assyria, a new power rose from the ruins, the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Neo means new. This was a second, even more glorious age for the ancient city of Babylon. The greatest king of this period was Nebuchadnezzar II. He ruled from 605 to 562 BCE. Under his reign means the period of his rule, Babylon became the most magnificent city in the world. Its walls were so wide that 2 chariots could race side by side on top of them. A chariot is a chariot vehicle pulled by horses used in war and racing. Nebuchadnezzar built something so beautiful that ancient writers considered it one of the 7 wonders of the world. It was called the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. According to legend, he built them for his wife, Queen Amytis. The gardens were said to be a series of terraces, stepped platforms, filled with trees, flowers, and flowing water, rising high above the flat Babylonian plain. Whether the hanging gardens truly existed is still debated by historians today. But the story itself tells us something important. Even the most powerful king in the world wanted to make his wife feel at home. Underneath the armor and the throne, he was simply a husband who loved his wife. Power and tenderness, strength and love. These are very human things. Babylon, under Nebuchadnezzar, was not just powerful. It was a cultural center. A cultural center is a place where art, learning, religion, and ideas flourish. To flourish means to grow and develop in a healthy, successful way. The city had grand temples, wide processional roads used for religious parades and ceremonies, and the famous Ishtar Gate. The Ishtar Gate was a massive entrance to the city, covered in brilliant blue tiles, decorated with golden dragons and bulls. It was dedicated to Ishtar, the goddess of love and war. Merchants from Egypt, Persia, India, and the Mediterranean came to Babylon to trade. The city was a crossroads. Babylonian astronomers, people who studied the stars, made extraordinary advances during this period. They could predict eclipses. An eclipse is when one celestial body, like the moon, moves into the shadow of another, blocking light. They tracked the movements of planets with remarkable accuracy. Accuracy means being exactly correct and precise. Babylon was not just a city. It was an idea of what human civilization could look like at its greatest. All great things eventually face their end. In 539 BCE, the Persian king Cyrus the Great marched into Babylon. His army was enormous. His reputation was fearsome. But something surprising happened. He did not destroy Babylon. He did not enslave its people. He did not tear down its temples. Instead, Cyrus issued what historians call the Cyrus cylinder, a clay cylinder, meaning a tube-shaped object, with writing on it, declaring that he would respect the customs and religions of the people he had conquered. He freed prisoners. He allowed deported peoples to return to their homelands. Deported means forced to leave their country. Some historians call this the world's first declaration of human rights. Human rights are the basic rights and freedoms that belong to every person. Mesopotamia was now part of the Persian Empire. Its cities still stood. Its temples still functioned. Its scribes still wrote. But the independent civilizations of Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, and Assyria would never rise again. An era had ended. An era is a long and distinct period of history. The word legacy means the lasting impact that something or someone leaves behind after they are gone. Mesopotamia's legacy is everywhere, even if we rarely see it. Every time you check the time, you use a system based on 60, invented in Mesopotamia. Every time you read a story, You follow a tradition that began with the Epic of Gilgamesh. Every time a court decides a case based on written law, it echoes the Code of Hammurabi. Every time a city manages its water supply, it follows a path laid by Sumerian irrigation engineers. The concept of the school, the library, the city, the king, the written contract, the legal system, even the alphabet you are reading right now has distant ancestors in cuneiform. Writing was born in Mesopotamia. And without writing, you could not read this sentence. We are, all of us, children of Mesopotamia. Standing at the end of this long journey, from the first farmers along the Euphrates to the fall of Babylon, we can ask a simple question. What does this story teach us? It teaches us that civilization is not guaranteed. It must be built, maintained, and protected. The Mesopotamians built cities from nothing. They channeled rivers. They wrote laws. They told stories. They looked up at the stars and tried to understand the universe. They failed too. Their empires collapsed. Their cities were buried by sand. Their languages were forgotten for thousands of years, but their ideas survived. Ideas are more durable than stone. Durable means strong and long-lasting. The Mesopotamians were not perfect people. They fought wars. They had slaves. They conquered their neighbors. But they also built libraries. They wrote poetry. They created justice. They dreamed of living forever and settled bravely for living well. That is a very human story. And it is our story too. The land between the rivers is now mostly desert and conflict. The great cities of Uruk and Nineveh and Babylon are ruins buried under Iraqi soil. The Tigris and Euphrates still flow, but they flow through a changed world. If you look carefully at the foundations of everything around you, your laws, your calendar, your alphabet, your stories, you will find Mesopotamia there. Quiet, patient, enduring. Enduring means continuing to exist through time, surviving hardship, and remaining meaningful. Civilizations rise, they struggle, they fall. But the best of what they create, the ideas, the words, the values, those travel forward. Through thousands of years, through every new empire and every new era, all the way to you right now reading these words on a screen. The story of Mesopotamia is not over. It is living inside you.